Welcome, welcome, welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Thank you for joining me again. I hope you're having a good day. Before we get started with today's video, I want to point you in the direction of the little details box, the descriptions box. You'll see a link there, and that link is for a little podcast that I did with Gman Boxing yesterday. I was on Gman's channel. It's a fantastic channel. I'm sure most of you have probably found my channel through Gman's, but if you're not subscribed to Gman, do so. It's a really terrific channel. He's a terrific Irish lad. We had a good old little chinwag. It lasted for about an hour or a bit more, hour and 7 minutes, I think it was. But go and have a look at it. We talk about AJ, and we talk about Fury and White, and we talk about DAZN and Jarrell Miller, you know, all these sorts of things. It's a cross-section of subjects on boxing. So check out that link. It's in the descriptions box. And yeah, give G-Man a thumbs up and a subscription. Well worth your time. So, Josh Warrington will face Kiko Martinez in a rematch of their previous title fight. This was when Warrington was IBF featherweight champ. He is now the challenger, and Martinez, at the advanced age of 35, having suffered a string of defeats, some of them inside schedule, found himself as the IBF champion again because he defeated, with a stunning knockout, Kid Galahad. And it must have been quite something for Martinez to watch Galahad and Martinez. It must have been something for Warrington to watch Galahad and Martinez fight for a title that he had vacated, considering he'd beaten both those men. Now, since leaving Frank Warren for Eddie Hearn, Warrington has had a disastrous run. I think he's only had the 2 fights. One was against Mauricio Lara. He got knocked out in 9 rounds, beaten up and knocked out in 9 rounds. And then in the rematch, it was curtailed. There was only a round and a half of action, if you can call it action, because there was a head clash and the fight was ended. It was a technical draw. So this is not the ideal preparation by any stretch of the imagination for Warrington. And mentally, and you know, if you watch my videos before, you know I go on and on and on about the mental side of boxing because I think it's so important, so incredibly important. But that's not good mental preparation. And okay, he'll be in Leeds and his fans will be cheering him on. The first Lara fight was behind closed doors, and Josh said afterwards, I just couldn't get up for it. It was weird. It was just a weird atmosphere. There was no atmosphere. It was like fighting in a vacuum and all this sort of stuff. Well, it was the same for Lara, who'd come all this way from Mexico to fight you, and he behaved like a professional and he won it. You know, he won the fight by stunning knockout. In the rematch, Lara, I saw some very ominous signs for Warrington in that rematch, because although Warrington was far less cavalier than he had been in the first fight, at the start of the first fight, I mean, he was just exchanging punches and like he was a pure puncher. He hasn't got that many knockouts on his record. But in the rematch, he was boxing. He was trying to be a bit more circumspect. But Lara was, on a couple of occasions, just little flashes, Lara got close and landed some, you know, just single heavy blows. And the body language and the facial expression and of Warrington seemed to suggest that he was getting flashbacks. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I'm thinking of one particular right hand towards the end of the first round that Lara landed, and immediately Warrington skipped away. It never for a split second occurred to him to stand and exchange or to counter. He just skipped away. I wouldn't say that maybe the writing wasn't on the wall, but there were some ominous signs for Warrington in that second Lara fight. And the fact that it was, you know, truncated to just a round and a half may well have done Warrington a favour. Now, the flip side of this is dear old Kiko Martinez, a man who never ever quits. It gets knocked down, gets up again, as the old song goes. No quitting this guy at all. Stopped by Gary Russell Jr., stopped by Leo Santa Cruz, done in 2 by Scott Quigg. Still came back, and how many years later? How many years difference is there between? It's years, certainly more than 5 years, probably 8-10 years between the 2 title reigns for Kiko Martinez. But he came back. I thought he beat Zelfa Barrett in their fight a couple of years ago. and he didn't get the decision. And I think they sort of, he had an 8-round run around winning Spain, and then he jumped in with Kid Galahad, fed to Kid Galahad as, you know, former champ, a guy who probably didn't have much left. Maybe Galahad will look good against him. And to be honest, Galahad did look good against him for 5 rounds, you know. Although it was noticeable that Galahad was doing silly things like switch hitting for no reason, and Kiko was gradually creeping up on him. His feet were creeping closer to within punching range of Galahad, about round 4 and 5, if I remember rightly. And then, of course, we all know what happened. Right at the end of one of the rounds, he got flattened, Galahad did. Kiko comes back in and knocks Galahad out with one punch, one single punch. The first punch of the 6th round. Stunning upset. And had it not been for Kambosos beating Teofimo Lopez, you could probably have called that the upset of the year. But anyway, the point is that at the very least, you have to say Martinez against Barrett. He gave Barrett a terrific fight, by far the toughest fight of Barrett's career. I thought he won that fight, but even if you think Barrett edged it, Martinez is on a very, very good run. This is a real Indian summer in his career. And he is the one in the ascendancy. He is the one with the confidence. He's the one who feels he can knock you out. Warrington, not many knockouts on his record. It's not that Kiko's a one-punch banger, but I think this will be a real test for Warrington. And there are so many intangibles. It's a very, very difficult fight to pick. Warrington, to me, I do worry about him, about his mentality, about his psyche, how damaged it is. And I do wonder whether the being in Leeds and the pressure and, you know, screaming fans and everything might even work against him, because he'll be so desperate to prove that the 2 Lara fights were an aberration. And also he's beaten Kiko before, so he's expected to outpoint or maybe even stop Martinez. So everything has been kind of laid on for the great homecoming, the great comeback, if you like. Maybe that's pressure for Warrington. Added pressure to the psychological scars that may exist to that horrendous beating and knockout that he got at the hands of Lara. Had he beaten Lara in the rematch, I think things would be very different. He'd have got his confidence back, but he didn't. And in that first round, he looked quite reticent about it. So I expect, technically there isn't a great deal to say, because I see Martinez normally fights pretty much the same way. He's not without skills. He cuts the ring off well. His footwork is pretty good. Not the fastest, but not the slowest either. He's a shorter guy, so he's got a tendency to crawl under the punches. Against Zelfa Barrett in the earlier rounds, I think might have even been the first or second round, he was landing some very good punches, crawling under Zelfa's jabs, and Zelfa's a mover. He was cutting him down quite well. And I thought Zelfa, even though I thought he lost the fight, I thought he managed to control a lot of that pressure quite well. But if Martinez comes out with putting that type of heat on Warrington, I do wonder whether Warrington is going to be able to absorb that heat and remain calm and not have flashbacks to the knockout. So as far as a prediction is concerned, I think Warrington will try and box. I don't think he'll stand and fight. I think he'll try and box. I think he'll try and use most of the ring, or as much of the ring as he possibly can. I think he's got to be cautious of using up too much energy early on. But I think it's going to be a very, very tough fight for Warrington. I think this will... You want a prediction? Difficult one. It's very difficult. If Warrington has something left, I expect him to outpoint Kiko in a possibly controversial, but certainly a very close fight, to outpoint him. But it would not surprise me if Kiko knocks out Warrington. So I'm hedging my bets, I guess. What do I pick? What do I go for? I hate sitting on the fence, so I'm going to pick something. Let me think now. Do you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb just for that crack. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to go with my heart and not my head, which I always think is a bad mistake to make. Don't take this as a tip. Don't put any money on this, right? But I'm thinking that Kiko will put pressure on Warrington and stop him late or maybe even with a couple of knockdowns, win on points, I'm going for Kiko Martinez to beat Warrington. Don't put money on it because I don't think I will be. I might have a cheeky fiver, but yeah, I don't say this with any confidence at all, but I'm going for Kiko Martinez to win this fight. Late stoppage or comfortable points. Although, of course, comfortable points can mean a split decision. We've seen some atrocious decisions, in recent years. But anyway, that's a video for another time. Anyway, what do you think? Who you got? Who's your money on? Do you think Warrington's carrying some demons? Do you think he's shaking the demons off? Do you think the environment, the whole Leeds atmosphere, will help him get rid of those demons and inspire him to be what he once was? Maybe that's the case. That could be the case. Do you think Kiko's knockout of Kid Galahad was not particularly, maybe not, maybe it flattered to deceive? Maybe it was a sort of a one-punch knockout that sometimes can happen. And don't forget, of course, Galahad was a little bit tight at the weight. Let's not forget that either. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Leave your comments below in the comments section. Don't forget, in the descriptions box, you will see that link for Gman and I's little podcast chit chat. I hope you enjoy that as well. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. I'd love that if you could subscribe. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed lately. There's been a lot of you. I know you watched the Gman and me thing and you subscribed. Much love to all of you. I'm really glad you've done that. I always appreciate when people watch my videos because I love making them, and I always appreciate your time. So, Kiko Martinez versus Josh Warrington. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. It's the weekend. It's boxing time. Much love to all of you. Speak soon.